Now, all this week, BBC London is looking at the changing face of London and what it means for the capital. Figures compiled for the programme suggest that in the next 20 years, the ethnic diversity of this city will change dramatically.
For the first time ever, the number of people who class themselves as white British is now a minority in London.
White folks are on track to becoming, and I hate to say this, the minority in America.
A new report out by the government shows that by the year 2042, white Americans will no longer represent the majority of the population. That prediction is 8 years sooner than previously expected.
Treason to whiteness is loyalty to humanity.
Your views are fairly well received in academia.
Yes, they're legitimate, not to say that everyone agrees, but sure. And the task is to bring this minority together in such a way that it makes it impossible for the legacy of whiteness to continue to reproduce itself.
And we British are being turned into strangers in our own land. And we were never asked whether we even wanted it.
So we're going to ship in all these blacks because the place is too white. It's not happening anywhere else.
Which is genocide.
My vision for the future of our efforts in diversity inclusion, in philanthropy, in community engagement, sustainability is pretty ambitious.
When you talk about MGM's future with diversity and inclusion, is to set the example for the rest of the world, to set the example for the industry. When you look at the diversity champions, to bring people together for 2 days to develop better leaders and to recognize the humanity in people. And as we hone another best practice, I like to say diversity and inclusion 3.0, when we put it out there to the rest of the world and develop this win-win mentality about this is what makes us great and we're willing to share it with you, not just this country, but the world, that's what lets us know that the legacy of who we are is letting the rest of the world have a piece of that. That's our next level, our next step. That's where we're going.
I want to talk about something that sounds very controversial, and it's about demographics. And as you know, Caroline Goodman, you've lived here for 50 years, and you've noticed two things have changed: the size of the valley and the demographics. And before I begin, I'm not trying to say that some group of people are superior than other, but I do believe that races and ethnicities are naturally different. And the world map of IQ reveals that. Some parts of the world have higher IQ, some parts of the world don't. And one of the things that I fear is that the demographics of my city will turn into demographics that you'll find in Los Angeles. And it will go so out of control that even my neighborhood, Centennial Providence, will begin to change. Now, this is the thing that I just wanted to tell you. If we see these changes, we're going to see a lot of changes in policy, in lifestyle, in culture, in laws, and the people who are represented in our council member. I believe that folks like Anthony, Soroka, and Fiore, and yourself will probably have a lesser chance of winning if we see Los Angeles-style demographics, because your positions and what you stand for are probably too extreme for a city like Los Angeles, because these are the changes that's going to happen. Now, unfortunately, there's not much you can do. You guys are not in control of immigration. You guys are not in control of birth rates. This speech is just mainly about awareness. I just want to spread the awareness. I want people to wake up. And I just think it's kind of fishy on why is diversity being imposed only in Western societies? Why is this being imposed in London, in Berlin, in Sydney? And even if you go to UNLV, they talk about diversity. Now, of course, I welcome everybody, and I think we should. However, I just feel that it's kind of fishy how this multiculturalist idea is only being imposed in certain parts of the world. And the fact is that the demographics prove that people prefer to live in areas that are much like themselves. This city does not have an equal distribution of races. Places like Summerlin and Centennial are different from places like here. So, I'm going to spread this information, and I'm very optimistic. I do believe that the recent changes that are being made, we're probably not going to look a lot like Los Angeles. And speaking about the person who just vacated the seat, the council member, I hope the person that does not replace that person is somebody who has like a La Raza agenda. Because if we see that, it's going to be very problematic. And we're already seeing that in many parts of California. So, again, I welcome everybody, but I don't want a heavy transformation of my city. Thank you so much. Great pleasure.
Anyone else? Hi, good afternoon.
Hello, everybody. I'm Cyrus. I'm from Centennial. And one issue I want to talk about is not on the agenda, is about racial demographics. Now, before I begin, I don't want people to misunderstand me that I'm a white nationalist or I believe that Clark County should just be for white people. But these current trends of demographics are quite troubling in terms of where it's headed and where we're headed in the future. And the fact is that if you look at the future trends, if you look at some organizations like the Culinary Workers Union, they praise the idea that white people are shrinking in percentage of population. Now, if I were to say something the opposite, if I were to say whites are increasing in percentage, everybody would label me as a racist, a bigot, or whatever. So I think that there's a lot of double standards, and also when I think about it, the races, I think people have to be very serious about it. They are overall different. If you look at the world IQ map, if you look at IQ levels of sub-Saharan Africa, Europe, Northeast Asia, they are overall different. Certainly if demographics change in Clark County, you're going to see differences of income, crime levels, and a lot of different aspects. So this is what my concern is. My concern is also that there seems to be a worldwide agenda to somehow diversify all the white areas, not just in the United States, but all over the Western world, including Europe. And what my largest concern is that I fear that Clark County pretty soon is going to have racial demographics that are very similar to Los Angeles and Long Beach. And we certainly all agree that we don't want a lot of Los Angeles policies and traffic and overcrowding in Clark County. So what can be done? You guys are commissioners. Well, unfortunately, there's not much you can do. This is really a federal issue. One thing we can do is we can limit immigration levels, and we have to have increases in the birth rate. Now, I want to speak to Mr. Gibson about this. I don't think you can deny the fact that if white people...
No, you're going to have to speak to me. Don't pick out a commissioner, okay?
Oh, my apologies. Okay. But if, let's just
That's
look
me.
at it this
Okay.
way. If Henderson was not white supermajority, I doubt it would have been the city that it is today. Not to say it would have been worse, but it would have been different. So this is the important thing that I wanted to get across. And I'm telling you this as a 25-year-old man who's from Iranian descent. I don't want immigration policies to continue to radically change Clark County and all over the Western world. Yes, we do welcome people from all over the world. I'm not suggesting that. But at the same time, I do want preservation. And I don't want it at a point where areas like Henderson, Centennial, and Summerlin are going to be radically changed into something else. So I'm going to be fighting for this. I'm going to be fighting for the prevention of massive demographic change. Thank you guys so much.
When we actually isolate the city of Henderson results against the others within Clark County and Nevada, you'll notice that gold bar is significantly higher for 5th grade proficiency in reading, as well as 7th grade and even the math proficiency in both 5th grade and 7th grade. Our graduation rates are also higher than both Las Vegas, actually in the balance of the state, as you can see. We're very proud of those graduation rates, and our schools work very hard to attain those.
There have been some things that have been kind of concerning with Henderson Strong, and I know that it's very likely your intentions are well, but after studying things across Clark County, one of the things that I see is that you're trying to promote high-density housing. And the thing that gets me is that high-density and low-density housing, there's a substantial difference among racial demographics. And I have a feeling these high-density housing will racially diversify the city of Henderson. Now, before I begin, I'm not trying to suggest that Clark County and Henderson should just be a white-only area. No, that's not what I'm suggesting. But, and by the way, anybody who wants to call me a racist, I think you should call the Culinary Workers Union racist, because they praise that minorities are increasing. So this is the thing that you have to understand, that races are overall different. I suggest you look at a world IQ map. You'll see that Europeans have higher IQs than sub-Saharan Africans, different with East Asians. The races have differences in intelligence, in blood testosterone levels. So when we're going to see racial diversification of our neighborhoods, more blacks, more Hispanics, more Asians, this could impact social life, school performance, a lot of different things. And in fact, you know, I spoke the same thing today with former mayor and current commissioner, Mr. Gibson. You guys advertise as being the safest cities in America. Now, why is that? Do you think you would be the safest city in America if you had demographics 10 miles north? I doubt it, because the races are overall different. And which brings to me, what makes it special? Because a lot of whites choose to come to Henderson because they're tired of the massive immigration agenda that's changed much of Clark County. See, my concern is that diversity is being practiced in all white areas across the world. Even London is turning into Londonistan. People have to start waking up. My fear is the fact that I wake up and I'm 85 years old living in Clark County, and guess what? Henderson and Clark County is going to look like Los Angeles. I don't want Los Angeles demographics to be a reality here, and I'm going to fight to make sure that doesn't happen. And by the way, I'm 25-year-old. I'm from Iranian descent. I'm telling you this stuff. If you believe in diversity, maybe if Henderson wants to build a new city hall, let's design it Persian style because it goes well with the climate. Why not? So I'm just letting you know that race does matter. We have to expose the political correctness. We have to expose the double standards. And I'm going to make sure that we don't see massive demographic changes in this city as well as Summerlin and where I live in Centennial. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry. I just can't. I can't hold back. You don't need to stand up. You can sit down, sir. I sat down for you. Yeah, I just want to go on record that Henderson is a community for all people. We open our doors to people who want to live in this fine city. And when we get to a point where we pick and choose who lives here, we're in trouble.
I want to make sure that you don't misunderstand me from a couple of weeks ago. I'm not interested in blocking certain people from moving in here. I'm not interested in forcibly bringing others in. I'm not interested. I'm interested in freedom of movement of themselves. The fact is, I don't consider myself, just in case if you were wondering, as some kind of supremacist. I'm not a fan of pickup trucks and beer cans out in the yards and rodeos and motorcycles. You know, I'm not a fan of that culture, and I see that stuff a few blocks away. So I believe every group has their pluses. I believe every group has their minuses. And the fact is, you guys don't have much in power. You guys are not in charge of immigration. You guys are not in charge of birth rates. But I do believe that what we can do is be aware. We have to be aware of possible demographic changes and what are the changes and what are the challenges that it could bring. You know, certainly
I think it's kind of like fishy how every Western society is being told that we got to be diverse, that we got to import other people in, especially when you hear that in Europe, and they're not able to preserve their homogenous societies. And the fact is, if demographics change, this is largely a Mormon neighborhood, and if they do, that culture is simply going to lose less of an influence. And every culture has its pluses and minuses. So I agree with Mars, with what you said a couple of weeks ago. We welcome everybody. I certainly like that. But let me tell you what I don't want to see. If you look at what's happening in California, Congresswoman Maxine Waters is getting some letter from the Center of American Islamic Relations and say, we're going to fund public housing for refugees. I certainly don't think that's a good idea, because I think they did that in Minnesota, and it really, really was not that pretty. I will tell you that. And the good news is there doesn't seem to be any plan. I just spoke to Mark. There is no section housing that's being planned. I'm very pleased to see that. I hope that does not change anytime soon. Kudos to him. And frankly, I believe everybody has to be right, and they have certainly the privilege to like their heritage and who they are, regardless of where you come from. And certainly, Europeans as well. And Europeans certainly got a lot of influences from people like us, Persians, Cyrus the Great. Thank you so much.
Cyrus, you need to understand that I own a truck, and I'm the president of the second largest rodeo in America.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying I'm not a fan of it. I'm just trying to point out that I'm not saying some cultures are better. Okay. But you see, we Persians, we look at that and we were not fans of it. Okay. It's fine. I'm just.
Thank God we live in America, huh?
Okay. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And this meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, I just have a response to the people that are concerned that population growth is draining our supply. If you want to change things, then I suggest you change California housing affordability, the Rust Belt economy, and our immigration levels. Now, one thing that has not been talked about is vertical farms and growing food indoors and closer to home. And I think this will be a game changer. And the main question I just wanted to talk about is the fact that, do you think that it's possible in my lifetime the population of Clark County can exceed 7 million people, and this city will exceed 500,000 people, meaning the fact that we'll have the water supply to support these people?
There's a lot in that question. Our extended population growth numbers show the possibility in the next 50 years of the community going from 2.1 million to 3.5, 3.6 million. So we believe we bracketed the planning horizon by looking at population in those numbers, and that we have sufficient water supply to handle that. You can change that number to anything you want. You want to change it to 7 million, change it to 7 million. It's just how much water people are using outdoors. If you're using it indoors, you don't increase the net depletion from the river system.